Hey there, welcome to another Teardown inspection. Today we have a 93 4L60E. It's out of a K1500 Blazer, and customer actually rebuilt this transmission himself about 1,000 miles ago, and unfortunately it lost 3/4 during a coming home from a camping trip. So we're going to tear it down, inspect it, and see what's up with it. I will say that I always commend folks for taking the chance on rebuilding their own units, kind of showing that initiative, conquering your fear and getting in there, tearing it all apart, and then putting it all back together. So good on him for doing that regardless of the outcome. With that said, my theory here is that the 3/4 clutch failed due to a very leaky drum, but we'll see. So one thing you'll notice right away is the presence of a 700R4 pump body. So 732, just want to point out here that this is perfectly fine for a 93-94 4L60E. Okay, they're interchangeable with the pump bodies that came in on these units. Okay, this feels like it has about 30 thou worth of end play, which is technically within spec, though on the higher side. I like to keep them somewhere between 15 and 25, at least 25 on the high side. 13 millimeters. So we're going to be doing some upgrades. Billet servo for 4th gear, Sonic's heavy duty 2-3 shift valve, Sonic's smart shell. He wants to kind of beef it up a little bit so we can continue to use it in a camping and utility capacity. It's a nice truck. All right. So another thing that can be do-it-yourself rebuilders is getting all what I call the glue sorted out and accounted for. So things like band clearance, pressure testing the drum, vacuum testing hydraulics. Most don't have the equipment to do that, and kind of like they may not even be aware that has to be done. So you want to force this in. If you're doing this in the car in terms of checking band clearance, you want to see about 125 thousandths worth of travel or so. Let it loosen it up a little bit. Alright, if you're towing and hauling, it's recommended that you do at minimum a Corvette servo for 2nd gear, and then if you think you're going to be doing a lot of towing, a lot of hauling, then you'll want to augment that with a billet 4th gear servo piston. Sonics and Superior Tech all make good quality servo components. The Superior Tech stuff, the 2nd and the 4th gear piston, the largest ratio pistons that you could buy on the market, to my knowledge. I could be wrong about that, but I haven't come across any products that give you more apply surface area on the 2nd and or 4th gear than Superior Tech. Sonics is very close, and a lot of builders prefer the Sonics because it's a little bit more refined. Sonics also gives you an oversized apply pin for your 2nd gear servo when you buy that, and that will allow you to dial in your band clearance by grinding on the pin. So if you watch my 700R4 Nemesis rebuild, it's part 2, I show that process in what I would call a decent level of detail, and you can get an idea of the level of effort and what's involved and all that stuff if you check that video out. Alright, we're not going to reuse this servo cover, but if you were, there's no harm in grabbing on it like that with a pair of pliers, no big deal. So if you watch my teardown videos before these transmissions, you know that this is my preferred method for getting the servo out of the bore here. So come in like this and engage the O-ring, and that should pop it out for you. Close that drawer. And of course I'm not prepared, so I had to go drag open my wastebasket. Alright, scarf cut sealing rings here on the 4th apply piston as well as the 2nd gear piston, for your where you would ostensibly put your Corvette servo. You can buy Viton rubber D-ring style seals in lieu of those scarf cut seals. They're a nice little upgrade as well. So he did indeed put a Corvette servo. Now, one of the things he mentioned was this thing lost a lot of fluid during the failure episode, and we'll look at the converter in a second, but you can see where the hub got really, really hot. Alright, I'm not sure what's going on here. It's a solid one-piece Teflon seal. It might be. Well, if it is, we're not going to reuse this servo, so I'll just keep it on there for now, I guess. Alright, I didn't ask him if he installed a shift kit. Forgot to do that. But if he did, then there would be springs on the inside of the cover here. So if there are, it'll be difficult for me to get that cover off. So let's see if I could do it. First, let's see if the camera angle's set up to where it needs to be. Okay, there's probably nothing in here other than the mainspring. Okay, fluid stinks real bad. So springs are in good shape. Alright, we're going to clean these up, but like I said, they're not going to be reused. Okay, he's got a 2-groove pin. This is going to be the more common, or the most common. There's no groove, 1 groove, 2 grooves, 3 grooves. As far as I know, that's it. Alright, check the bore in here, make sure there's not scoring. Make sure you don't have any problems. Alright, this is going to be your vent tube. Don't lose this. Don't lose track of it. I'll just stick it back there for now. And tidy up the bench a little. Let me bring the torque converter over. I'll zoom in on that hub real quick. Alright, so notice it got real hot there. This actually looks like a converter that my builder may have produced for the customer. He likes to paint all his torque converters black. I could be wrong, but anyway, you can see all the way around. Real hot. So I'll let that drain into the trough. Alright, 15mm on your selector nut. Sorry about that. So I get all too overeager to continue the teardown, and I forget about the camera angles. Alright, here is going to be your torque converter clutch O-ring. Check this if you're having converter, lockup issues, falling in and out of lockup or whatever the case may be. That O-ring likes to harden over time, although that one felt brand new, which we know it was. Alright. Alright, looks like no fluid was drained. And the wrong socket was used. 13mm. Stinks real bad. So classic signs of massive soft part failure. Alright, let me reset and then we'll continue. Alright, I wanted to drain the fluid a little bit, and also wanted to get those bolts out of the big parts bin and into the little parts bin. So one thing that I'll commend the customer for here as part of his rebuild is that he replaced the harness. Alright, there's not going to be a PWM solenoid. You have your 3-tube control solenoid, It looks like he did not replace that, and I'll show you something where I used to do this too before I realized, but he cracked the little receptacle here. Again, it's a common mistake because there's actually one way that those go, those little connectors here from the harness actually connect in with the receptacle and the solenoid, and if it's, if you put it in, it's not the correct way, then it'll break it. All right, 1-2 accumulator. All right, you want to scrutinize these accumulators, or the housings specifically, because more and more of them are getting scored up to the point where they're like basically not usable. Okay, 93, 94, and I believe 95 have the large diameter pin for the piston. So they have the single large accumulator return spring, and they use the large diameter piston. Okay, so you want to replace this and the fourth accumulator piston as well. Don't reuse these. Just could go over there. All right. Now we'll just simply disengage all of our connections. We're not going to reuse this harness. It'll be replaced. When you have a failure like this, it's never best to, try and salvage electrical components. Alright, and it looks like he has the EPC. Generally you want the EPC oriented so that the connector goes in horizontally, because it is, there's like a little locking tab, and let me see if I can even get to it. Not really. No, there we go. Alright, now we have access to the valve body. So 10mm bolts everywhere except for these three. Those are 8mm. And you want these three 8mm bolts going back in the exact same place. Two 8mm bolts on the pressure switch manifold as well. And it does look like he replaced this, though I could be wrong. It looks new superficially, it just looks burnt as well. These two bolts are shorter. The rest of them, as far as the 10mm bolts, are all the same length. And all bolts, regardless of what they are here on the case belly, receive that got rounded off, between 98 and 108 inch-pounds. That got rounded off. I'm going to have to come with a cut-off tool or Dremel and remove it that way. Alright, give me a few moments and I'll go ahead and get the cut-off tool and we'll remove that bolt. Okay, so the plan of attack here is to take this cutoff tool, and you can use a Dremel or something like this, or whatever works, and make a slit here right down the middle of the bolt. Okay, and then that'll allow you to get a screwdriver bit, I should say, in combination with an impact driver to get out that bolt. So, eye and ear pro, do the best you can, line everything up. Alright, it wasn't my finest work, but it got it done. Alright, let me tidy up the bench. Get this valve body off of here. 7 check balls total on the valve body. We're going to omit one of them, and that is the number 6 flow control check ball. So the number 6 flow control check ball is going to be this location right here. This round check ball location. Do not omit the check ball in the bathtub. Make sure that goes back in along with the rest of them. Alright, so as you can see, there is no PWM solenoid. It's a 93, 94. They do not have those. And then this is what I was referring to earlier. You see how that's cut right along there? It's because the little connector on the harness was installed backwards relative to the correct arrangement or orientation. Alright, reverse hold down plate is going to be 8mm. Sorry about that. And then parking pole guide plate is going to be 13mm. Alright, and we got our linkage arm. I think that fell in there. No big deal. Okay, so he did use the correct gaskets. 93 to 2000, you want to have the gaskets installed that are all black, no stripes, and have the single letter here to indicate where that gasket goes. So V is valve body to spacer plate, and then there's going to be a C on the other one that will indicate spacer plate to case. Hopefully this will come off willingly. Alright, let's take a quick gander at the plate itself. Alright, so it's going to be a 2-3 feed, not drilled. That's your band release. The 1-2 is not drilled. And the 3-4 is, looks like it may have been drilled, although these may have a little bit larger orifice sizes on these earlier units. So we're going to drill this out to 93 thousandths. That can stay the same. The 1-2, probably not going to open up that more than about 86 thousandths. And then the 3-4, we're going to open up to maybe 93 to 100 thousandths and put a very stiff spring in the accumulator, assuming I don't block it off altogether. Alright, looks like he put a slightly stiffer spring, or maybe these 93, 94 units took a stiffer spring. To be honest, at this right second, I can't recall. So as I mentioned, we're going to replace these accumulator pistons. They are not to be reused. Plate itself is slightly bent. I mean, you could reform it. It's not that big of a deal, but this one looks like it's bent across a couple of different axes. So more than likely, I'm going to have him replace his plate. A bent plate like this can cause cross leaks. So if yours is kind of bent, warped, misshapen, I would just simply replace it. Transgo's 93, 94 plate is what we are likely going to put into here. It's a good separator plate. Oh, here's a linkage arm. It's a good separator plate. One thing I forgot to do is disengage the wiring harness tabs on the front side, so you have your locking tabs. So what you would need to do is come in with the hammer and just take them right out. And that'll break the tabs so that you can free up the case connector from the case. Almost did it again. Almost did it again with the wrong socket. So 10mm. And this is Rostra's 1993 to 2002 wiring harness. 03 and up. The connector for the electronic pressure control solenoid changed. Bosch started making the solenoid itself, so the wiring harness changed to accommodate that change in the style of connector, or design of connector, I should say. Alright, 15 millimeter on your castellated nut for the selector shaft. Later 4L60s had a longer shaft to accommodate the manual lever position sensor. They started that in 1995 for 4L60s and 4L80s. Alright, get your band style spacer. Let's see, is this going to fight me? Yes, it will. It will fight me. Now, I received lots of suggestions from folks on how to deal with selector shafts that are stubborn like this, and one of those suggestions, or one of the most common suggestions, I should say, is to kind of, you know, take I don't know, something, either a die grinder with a wafer pad or a file, and get rid of the burrs. And the burr in question is going to be right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little angle grinder and see if we can deal with it. Bring it a little closer so you can kind of see what I'm referring to, and then I'll also zoom in. So right here is where the problem is usually at. See how it's getting caught up right there? So our goal is to knock that down so that it's not an issue and we can get the selector out. Alright, so just need some touching up. And it came right out. So, good suggestions by all who made them. This is just a snap-on. Sorry, this is just a snap-on angle grinder with a wafer pad medium grit. Always forgetting to zoom in and zoom back out. Alright, pump. Just go like this. In fact, I like to have the curved portion of the pry bar inward toward the reverse input drum, so the drum doesn't want to also follow the pump out. Because if it does, a lot of times the band will also get caught on the reverse drum, reverse input drum I should say. And just dislodge the band. Let's have a look-see. Now you got quite a lot of wear on the band in such a short time. So it's likely due to fluid loss. This is a little filter screen. It was in the cavity here, you know, in the bore. May have fallen down, I'm not sure. Here's the pump gasket. I have our sun gear. It's our front sun gear. This is where you want to relieve the sun gear for additional lubrication flow. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. So that's bad news. Let's go ahead and dissect the pump real quick. Give us something to do while I think about how to approach that problem. Take a look at the splines. This thing's bleeding out all over the place. Check journal. You did get the sealing rings on. Not sure if they were replaced or if they were original. You always have to replace your sealing rings, lip seals, O-rings, things of that nature. All must be replaced. Again, one of the challenges that a do-it-yourselfer is going to have is the specialized tooling or lack thereof. I mean, these transmissions aren't overly, overly complex when it comes to special tools. You don't need a ton of them, but there's a few things that you need. They have also been purchased as a reman pump. So it should be a 10 vein. And that's what we have. Rotor guide. I think it's a 10 vein, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay. The rings look new. You still have some of their kind of heat resistant coating on them. Yeah, he may have purchased this as a reman pump. Okay, pump vanes are never to be reused. And those look new to me as well. So always check your rotor, check your slide. So your clearances that you want to manage to when it comes to between the top of the rotor and the top of the slide in relation to the pump body deck surface are going to be as follows. 1 to 1.5 thousandths of clearance between the top of the rotor and the top of the deck, and 1 to 2 thousandths from the top of the slide to the top of the deck. Alright. So we have a lot of wear here on the slide. So remember, he lost a lot of fluid. A lot of it came out of the front of the transmission. So this pump more than likely was starving for fluid during those last few miles before he, completely lost third and fourth gear and the transmission laid down. Alright, don't forget your little pivot pin spring. Truly nasty. Alright, this is going to be your TTC lockup valve or apply valve. This is going to be your pressure regulator valve. This is where you will vacuum test. This is your spring, and this is your boost circuit right up in here, this fish-shaped cavity. Okay, and then of course, here's your boost valve. I'm going through rags like you wouldn't believe. And again, checking camera, I just want to make sure you guys are in the view and you can see what's going on here. Alright. It's unfortunate that this is fighting me. What you can do is take something, doesn't matter really what it is, something that'll fit, and a hammer, and just tap on the boost valve to kind of, dislodge it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But what I'm trying to do is just move the sleeve so that it will respond to downward pressure and kind of push up against the spring tension and come out when I move the snap ring. That doesn't seem to be happening. Alright, well, we got the snap ring out anyway. So now we're going to go ahead and force everything else out. So grab it here, come in, get that middle land, and then get the main land on the pressure regulator valve, and that will dislodge the boost valve. So that boost valve is factory, which means it's probably original. There's your springs. Alright, one of the things you want to scrutinize, and just visually anyway, is these two lands right here. and this land right here. Alright, if this is real worn out, you'll start breaking rotor and slides in the pump, even if you remachine everything and it's built to tolerance and all the clearances are within specification, it won't matter. And then these two lands right here, if these are really worn, you'll have chronic issues with 3/4 clutch failure. Alright, so we're not going to reuse this rotor guide. I install new rotor guides, new vanes, a lot of times completely new set of valves. It just depends on, you know, what you're confronted with when you test these things on the vacuum tester. So again, this is where most do-it-yourselfers kind of will have a gap in their tool set, because frankly that stuff is expensive, and if you're only going to build a transmission once in a blue moon, do you really want to spend the money? You know, being able to repair and you know, remount things like valve bores and vacuum test is probably not going to be worth your money unless you plan on actually maybe going into business for yourself. Then it's worth the capital expenditure to you know, to make and invest in those tools. You can see where it got hot. Sonex makes a drop-in valve to swap in place of the factory version. It's got a Teflon sealing ring on it, so it seals up this end of the bore very nicely. And then I think it's about 2 or 3 10,000ths oversized, so if it's mildly worn here, the casting, that valve will fix that problem and restore the bore to where you can use it again. Alright, see, it looks like our little seal here for the filter pickup is starting to wander. See if I can get it out on the bench. Usually I chuck them in the vise. Yeah, I'll fuck with it later. Sorry, mess with it later. Alright, now we've avoided the potential problem long enough. Let's see if we can get this thing apart. So right now it's one unified assembly. You see this? This is also burnt in the trash. Alright, so reverse input drum was baked into this build. Anytime we're doing something like, you know, even remotely performance or heavy duty, 4L60 or 700 R4, I quote the reverse input drum because I know it needs to be replaced, because you would never run a wide 2/4 band on a used drum. I was expecting to see a completely toasted reverse input clutch, but actually it don't look too bad, at least from here. Alright, 3/4s. Okay, crispy critters, but not going to deal with them just yet. And then looks like we have the thrust bearing installed backwards. Alright, let's see what washer this is. This is a number 68 washer. So, all things equal, this would probably take a number 69 or maybe even number 70. Okay, see how hot the bearing got? We're not going to reuse this bearing either. It's no good. Put that aside for a second. Let's quickly disassemble the reverse input drum. See what sort of shape these clutches are in. Clutches and steels. Okay, we're going to go back together with a 4L65E module, so he'll have tubular steels in this location. Alright, these are basic exit clutches. Nothing wrong with them. I mean, I've used them myself. No issues there. Okay, it's very rare that you see problems with the reverse input drum, at least in my own experience. I mean, you guys have done thousands and thousands and thousands of these transmissions. You know, maybe your take is different, but I rarely see this this clutch burnt. It's usually the low reverse clutch when there is a no reverse complaint or condition. All right, then we have our cushion plate. And then I'm going to see if I can try to get that out on the bench. Never been able to do it. I'm going to try it. Why not? Okay, fresh battery in. So I believe this reverse input drum is actually replaced. At least it looks like it. All the new drums that I've been getting have this kind of shadowing, showing some sort of, I don't know, finish work or process on the inside of the lugs here, you know, on the metal. Okay, the lugs for the sun shell look to be in like new condition for the most part. I mean, you don't see the usual amount of wear. Looking at the sun shell, now I pay attention to this. I want to see if there's an out of round condition, especially when I see the band all tore up like that, or the working surface of the drum completely scored like this, to see if there was any potential problems with the band anchor pin. In fact, let me bring that band back. I gotta take that piston out of there too. That in of itself, that return spring assembly and the piston are good. They're not going to be thrown out. Let's take a look at the band. So it's this location right here. Okay, I have a video real recent that transmission came in 4L60E where this part of the band anchor pin location had failed and was basically gone, and that allowed the band to drift and push counterclockwise into the case. That bowed out the reverse input drum and the sun shell, and it started to machine a groove into the inside of the case board. So very bad. The case had to be replaced. It was no good. Alright, now what we're going to do is put some transmission fluid in there to test. I always do this, even though I'm pretty much going to replace this drum. I'd be very surprised if it's in decent shape. Notice here, this is the third from the top sealing ring. It looks a little different than the others. I'm not sure why. Maybe the other three were replaced, that one was not. Don't know. Alright, this is going to be our 3/4 clutch feed. See what we got. And do this before you disassemble the drum. Don't disassemble the drum and then do this. Okay, this is actually passing. There's no bubbles there. How about that? How about that? Forward. Okay, that looks good. Coast clutch. So you need to plug the forward feed hole when you charge the coast clutch apply circuit. Alright, this drum passed the pressure test. So you want to scrutinize these splines. Seen discussion on Facebook in the 704 4L60E what do you call it, tech support group, where a lot of folks have been reporting seeing and having these transmissions come in with like completely stripped splines. think somebody had a shaft broken in half. All kinds of things going on. So if you're going to reuse your drum, make sure you check this. What you're looking for is wear that kind of looks like this visually, but the splines narrow considerably from where they start here at the base and where they terminate here at the end. So if the spline strip, you'll have a no movement condition. Alright, I want to put this drum in the hole in the bench so we can easily disassemble it, but I don't want crap all over the floor. Ideally, I would have liked that hole to be set back a little bit further toward the back of the bench than where it is, but I bought the bench used, and it's a wonderful bench. You know, not everything's going to be hunky-dory perfect. Alright, let's see what we got here. We're going to replace everything in the 3/4 clutch, and when you have a burnt clutch pack like this, you never ever want to reuse the apply and backing plate set. Okay, this metal is no good. I mean, it's shot. The snap ring's fine. The rest of it is shot. So, should be 6 frictions, 5 steels. And sometimes you have all steels because the friction discs no longer have any friction on them. Okay, see how badly combed this got? Perfectly normal when it comes to these transmissions. So you got your 3 and 3. We're going to go 7 frictions, 6 steels, 4L65E spec. So, like I mentioned, despite the fact that this thing actually passed the test, you know, the pressure test, I am not going to reuse this drum. I'm going to recommend that he replace this drum. I mean, it is completely charbroiled. It saw an incredible amount of heat forcing and exposure to heat. Yeah, you know, you can do what you want, but I don't want to take chances on having this thing come back to me, you know, in the near future because the drum just, you know, failed in some way. Okay, forward backing plate, these are selective. You just want to check, make sure it's not all boogered up. I mean, this is just, you know, sludge. Other than that, it appears to be fine. Do your real inspection after you clean everything off. Okay, coast clutch backing plate looks fine. Here is your cushion plate for the forward clutch. And then this is the forward clutch pack. We're going to put a steel module on this thing. I'm not going to reuse any of the steels. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm going to have to replace my glove as well. So, even with a 2-glove setup that I'm using, it's still not good enough. Let me go ahead and do that and then we'll resume. Alright, so this is another bearing that we're going to want to replace. I'm going to reuse that. And then if you guys are working on 700R4s, always replace this seal here with a 4L60E rubber Viton seal like this. Don't ever reuse the plastic ones that come in the kits. There's our coast clutches. So it looks like the snap ring has popped out. So this may have contributed to the failure here. This would have caused clutch drag, possibly in the 3/4s and the 4s. I'll have to look at the hydraulic diagram, but I mean, I don't believe I did this. I mean, you know, I've never seen one of these pop out that were otherwise secured when doing the pressure testing. So it could be that when he put this back together, he didn't have it secured all the way, and it's unfortunately an all too easy mistake to make, especially if it's, you know, a process that you're new or is new to you, you're not used to doing it, and you know, you don't catch it. Alright, there's all the steels. That is all of the backing plates we're also not going to use. All garbage. Let me see if I can now get all of this out. Get the snap ring out of here. See if it'll come loose. Yeah, I mean, it's already spread wide open. Okay, so this will have to be replaced. Alright, we are going to replace all of the 4 drum pistons with 97 and up bonded steel and rubber pistons. We've not ever reused these aluminum pistons. Particularly the forward piston, it likes to crack. I've seen them crack all along the sidewall here. The tabs crack. I mean, they're just no good. At least in my opinion. No air. Alright, so I got a hyper blue bonded piston for the 3/4 clutch. Got our number 4 apply ring. He has a number 4 apply ring. That's actually good because that'll give us tight clearance for the 3/4 clutch when we go back with this. This should give us between 25 and 35 thousandths clearance. That's what I typically see. So a little bit of good news. And then we have an early style 3/4 clutch return spring. Early or late, doesn't really matter. Perfectly fine. Okay, forward piston housing, you always want to check in here for wear. A lot of times you won't know you have wear there until you reassemble the drum and you do your first air check. And if you hear a whole bunch of hissing coming from the interior of the drum when you're charging the forward feed circuit, well, that is going to be an excessively worn forward piston housing. Alright, like I said, I'm going to clean this drum, but I'm not comfortable reusing it. It saw an incredible amount of heat. It is a wonder that it passed its pressure test, and for all I know, it could be passing at room temperature and failing when hot. Let's try to organize the bench here. Alright, let's take a look at the forward sprag. So, rotation is thusly. So when you're holding the coast clutch hub or you're holding the inner element, the forward hub here, the outer race, spins clockwise and locks counterclockwise. Don't know if he replaced it, but that sprag does look like it's at some point has been replaced. He may have replaced it. So you want to check here for scoring, signs of heat damage or anything like that. This looks good. You reuse that, no problem. Okay, you never reuse your one-way assemblies. You always replace those. And then for your inner diameter or sprag bearing surface for the race, make sure that it's also not heavily either scored or overly shiny. If the whole surface looks mirrory smooth, that would tell me that this is worn and would need to be replaced. This particular one looks okay. 320 to 400 grit sandpaper all the way around a whole bunch of times. We'll reintroduce cross hatching, and that will kind of prep the surface for the new sprag. Alright, let me reorient the camera so that we can get everything else out of the case. And the little band anchor pin is wedged. Not an uncommon thing. Alright. 90-degree pliers to get rid of the snap ring for the output shaft. I don't believe this was replaced. The new ones that are coming in all the kits, at least the Transtech kits or Transtar kits, they're brown in color. Yeah, they got like a light brown to them. Those kind of yellowish painted ones are older. They're indicative of a snap ring that's been in there for a while. Okay, check this captured bearing. Check our planets. check splines, check journal, check structure, look for heat bluing. This planet looks okay. Okay, we're not going to reuse this reaction shaft. We're going to upgrade him to an 03 and up version. So that's already on the bench. Come on. Got our snap ring. So here's where you want to inspect for wear on the reaction shaft. I mean, unless there's a lubrication failure, most of the time the journal's fine, most of the time the structure is fine. Okay, this bushing would be replaced. The splines are usually in good shape, again, unless there's some sort of lube restriction or, you know, something here got overly hot and you've made metal contact. But this is where I see a lot of wear. And they'll strip and you'll have a hub and a shaft that are no longer kind of unified, so to speak. Okay, we see a lot of heat here, a lot of heat. I'm going to have them replace this part as well. I don't like that. You see that much heat, that concerns me because it leads me to believe that this could potentially fail, especially if we're building this for like a kind of a heavy duty type application. Look at this bearing. Bearings can be reused as long as they're in good shape and they don't show any signs of extreme heat soaking. So far, that's the first bearing that I would consider reusing. The other ones, I'm not going to reuse. Alright, so when you install a Sonic Smart Shell and an 03 up 4L60 reaction shaft, you eliminate these two thrust washers and you replace them with Torrington bearings. And that's exactly what you want to do for any heavy duty or high horsepower build. 700 R4s, 4L60Es. Okay, this is, I think he replaced this. This looks like one of those standard aftermarket heat-treated shells. It's oblong or, you know, that around. I don't know, it's not going back in, so it doesn't matter. Alright, center sport, you have your rear sun gear. Maybe. Okay, check teeth. Check splines. Relieve your passages here by cutting little slits. Okay, just like the forward sun gear. One thing to make note of, and I've been seeing this a lot lately, the Sonic's one-piece extra wide bushing that goes in here is been too tight lately. Too tight. I've had to clearance the bushing with sandpaper. I want to say the last 6 or 7 of them that I've used over the course of the last few months or so. I don't know why that is. I gotta talk to Sonics tomorrow. Today's Sunday, so I'm gonna call them tomorrow morning. You know, talk to one of the guys I usually talk to, and see if he has any insight on what's going on. If they changed design, or if they're doing something different, or if there's like a production issue with, you know, I don't know, recent batches of these things. Alright, I just want a bath. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and extract the center support. And lately I've been using a technique that another viewer had shared with me. His name's Larry Sham. He's built probably more transmissions than I ever will. And so what he likes to do is take his snap ring pliers. He'll go in between on one side of the anti-clunk spring and one of the case lugs and spread the snap ring pliers until the one side of the anti-clunk spring collapses past the center support lug. And so that'll free it up. And then what he'll do is while he's doing that, he'll put air into the low reverse feed, apply the piston, and that usually pushes everything forward and allows you to extract the center support relatively painlessly. So you need pretty much a full charge of compressed air to do this. 100 to 120 psi is what I would recommend. And then go up in there, make sure you got good purchase, find your low reverse feed, and that should free up the center support. should. Alright, there we go. Alright, so low roller clutch rotation. Freewheels clockwise, locks counterclockwise. The low roller clutch is not a high rate failure item, though we are going to replace this one. So we can go ahead and grab everything else out of the case. We'll take a look at everything. Here's your anti-clunk spring. You can go with a steel case saver in there too if you want. And then here's our output shaft, the 4x4 shafts. Given they're much shorter, oftentimes they'll just fall out on their own, or you can just take them out. Some check balls. So you see I have magnets all across the backsplash, and that's to catch all those check balls. They like to get back there. Alright, selector shaft seal. Alright, so I had to turn the air back on. So that's why the bench looks a little bit different than it did in the segment immediately prior to this. For those of you that are, you know, kind of catch those sort of details, continuity errors, things like that in the video. Alright, so our last task as it relates to the case is to put the tool here to compress the low reverse piston return spring assembly and then remove it with the same snap ring pliers that you saw me use just a second ago on the anti-clunk spring. Alright, well first we'll take a look at the low reverse clutch. Okay, it definitely got a little warm. A little warm. So that's your cushion plate right there. These things are smoked. So one of the things that has me wondering is if there was a general line pressure issue in this transmission. I'll have to ask him to see if he replaced the electronic pressure control solenoid, but for only 1,000 miles, I mean, these things are crispy. That is not usual or normal. So we'll scrutinize the seals on the low reverse piston. Given he's a do-it-yourselfer, I'm wondering if he did not actually replace the low reverse piston machine cut seals because he didn't have the tool to compress, you know, that piston. That's a theory. Like I said, it's just a theory, it's just speculation, I have no idea. I didn't get into that level of detail with him when he dropped the transmission off. In other words, get into every single step of the process for building the transmission, you know, what he did and didn't do. So in a follow-up conversation, I'll ask him. All right, I'm looking for the opening of the snap ring. It appears to be right here. So let me install this thing and then I'll see if I can get it out with, you know, with this thing facing the camera, facing you, so you can see exactly what you need to do. I do notice that the snap ring is not engaged on all the locking bosses or retention bosses on the return spring assembly. So like I said, I don't know if that's him or if he did not replace, you know, if he did not remove the assembly and replace those machine cut seals. And it looks like he has an old school 700R4 type vent tube in here too. Alright, it's partially out, that's why I'm having trouble grabbing up on it. So much for showing you. There's a lot of sludge on here. So you see some signs of heat. But that said, that return spring assembly looks fine. It's a little dirty. Right, let's go ahead and get this piston out of here and take a look. See if we can spot anything that will explain why these frictions are so burnt. Alright, so one thing I notice here, and this is very important, we have a casting number of 8681725. Okay, these first four numbers are irrelevant. It's this number right here that you need to pay attention to. So we are not going to reuse this this piston. It's known for cracking. Let's see if it's actually cracked. So again, it's kind of one of those glue items that unless you build these all the time or you did so much research that you basically absorbed an entire encyclopedia's worth of information in the relatively short time that you had prior to actually starting your your project, you're probably not going to know this, but 725, this lot of pistons is known for failing. Alright, there's a blurb about it in the ATSG manual. I covered in several other videos, including my low reverse deep dive video. Okay, these seals feel like they might be a little hardened. Now, here's the intermediate seal. No, that actually feels okay. It's this inner seal here that is often hardened. It hardens over time and causes blow-by. And that will by itself cause your premature failure of the low reverse clutch if you don't replace the seal. And this actually feels hardened to me because I can't even get my pick in here. Usually it just takes it right out. Oh yeah. So you can see the difference. See how malleable this is? And then here, and I realize you can't reach through your computer or phone or whatever you're watching this on and feel this, but if you could, this would feel like plastic, especially this section right in here. So that's our approximate cause for failure. And it did not help. Like I said, he's probably not going to know this, but either he did not replace these three seals here. That is kind of my guess at this point. Or if he did, it got hot back here for another reason. But like I said, a priori, he most likely didn't replace the seals. So not everyone's going to have one of these tools. I mean, they're not that expensive. But again, you need to know that you need them. Yeah, that's the biggest challenge for DIYers, is that you don't know a lot of times when you're building transmissions for the first time. And I include myself in that category. You wouldn't believe the amount of information when it comes to I don't know what I don't know as it applies to me when I first started building transmissions. I mean, you could fill a book equivalent to the size of War and Peace. And, you know, I've learned some lessons the hard way as a result, but is what it is. You know, that's how you learn. All right, let's take a look at the planets real quick. You have a bearing here. There's our rear planet. Just spin your pinions. If pinions are making noise, chances are they're no good. Check for side play. Vertical play, just like the other planet, just like any planet. Check your ring gear. Check your teeth. Make sure the structure is not cracked. Anytime you have a low reverse clutch pack failure, a lot of heat, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes I'll also see this, the structure here cracked. These two are independent of each other. This is the reaction element, this is the parking gear, and your rear ring gear. So you can replace one or the other as needed. Alright, that is the teardown. Unfortunately a big mess. We're going to need a forward clutch drum. Like I said, I'm not comfortable reusing that one. It's just, there was just too much going on in there for me to be comfortable with warrantying a job, putting that particular drum back in. Plus it's starting to get wear there on those lugs for the reverse input clutch. What else? This will be replaced with a different piston. We're going to also replace this clutch hub. And some of you guys watching this build, maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, no, I could reuse that clutch hub. That's fine. That ring gear is nothing wrong with it. I mean, if that's how you want to roll, or you're comfortable with that, I have no issues there. But I don't feel comfortable with it. Okay, the rest of the build is going to receive, full overhaul kit, 4L65E spec, clutch module, steel module, updated 97 and up bonded pistons. I mean, not necessarily updated, just 97 and up bonded pistons with the corresponding return spring. Sonic Smart Shell. Pump will be completely going through. Sonic's boost valve. We still have to vacuum check the other valve trains, the PR valve and the apply valve, as well as the valve body. I'm also going to have him replace the spacer plate. Alright, as you can see, it's got like undulations in it. It's warped in multiple different axes or ways. So I don't like that. Reverse input drum, we know we were going to replace that straight away, but the amount of wear on it is rather concerning. And that's a new drum, or at least it was new when he put it in there. Alright guys, that's a teardown. There's parts I didn't mention, like overhaul kit, filter, I mean common sense stuff, just know that that's always included. And torque converter. Alright, torque converter got hot. Like I said, I think that converter might have been built by my converter builder. At least he likes to paint all his converters black, and it looks like one of his paint jobs. So I'll be interested to see what he says tomorrow when I present it to him for overhaul. Alright, as always, thanks so much for watching. Greatly appreciated. Sorry if it was a little slow and ponderous at times. Shit happens, but ultimately we got through it, and I think I have a good idea of what I want in here, absent testing the hydraulics. So if there's anything noteworthy I discover there, I will do a follow-up video and kind of talk through what I found and how I think that contributed to the failure here. Again, only 1,000 miles, so but we saw a couple things that maybe weren't done quite right, or that's just simply because the customer is not a transmission builder, and that just is what it is. Again, hats off to him for trying this. Most will not. So he had the stones to give it a go. Yes, it didn't quite work out the way he would have liked, but I've had my share of comebacks as well and things I did wrong. It happens. Alright everyone, thanks so much again. Talk to you soon.